For 2 million years we wandered. The earth was our only home, the stars our only map. We followed the herds across endless grasslands, sought shelter in caves when winter came, and moved on when the water ran dry. Then one day we stopped, and everything changed. Before there were kings, there were tribes. Before there were empires, there were families moving across endless land, chasing the seasons, the herds, and hope. For most of human history, we owned nothing but what we could carry: a flint blade, a piece of hide, fire, if we were lucky. But survival is exhausting. Every day was a question: where will we sleep? What will we eat? When will we move again? For millennia, this was simply the way things were. The idea that life could be different, that we could stay in one place, that the earth could serve us instead of us chasing it, hadn't yet been imagined. Then, in the fertile valleys of the Middle East, something began to grow, not just plants, but a new way of life. Around 12,000 years ago, someone noticed something extraordinary. The seeds that fell to the ground didn't just disappear, they returned. Wheat sprouted where wheat had been harvested. Barley grew where barley had grown before. It was a revelation that would reshape our species forever. We learned to shape the earth, and in return it began to shape us. The first farmers didn't know they were starting a revolution. They were simply trying to make tomorrow a little less uncertain. They scattered seeds in the rich soil near rivers, the Tigris, the Euphrates, the Nile, and waited. When the rains came and the shoots pushed through the earth, something miraculous happened. Abundance. For the first time in human history, food didn't have to be found. It could be grown. Animals didn't have to be hunted. They could be kept. Sheep, goats, cattle, creatures that once scattered at our approach, now grazed within sight of our homes. We domesticated them, and in a way, they domesticated us. We became tethered to the land, bound by the seasons of planting and harvest. With crops came permanence. With permanence came structure. Villages became cities and survival became history. The first settlements rose near water and fertile soil, simple clusters of mud brick homes where extended families stayed not just for a season, but for generations. Children grew up seeing the same horizon their parents had seen. The dead were buried nearby, their presence anchoring the living to the land. As villages grew, so did complexity. Someone had to decide when to plant, when to harvest, how to divide the surplus. Leaders emerged, not the strongest hunter, but the wisest planner, the best organizer. Priests interpreted the will of gods who now had permanent temples. Scribes carved symbols into clay tablets, transforming memory into record, thought into text. Writing wasn't invented for poetry. It was invented for accounting, for tracking grain and debts and power. But once we learned to capture language, we captured time itself. By 5,000 years ago, true cities had risen from the Mesopotamian plain. Uruk, with its massive walls and towering ziggurats, housed tens of thousands of people who had never met each other, yet somehow coexisted. Suma's city-states became humanity's first experiment in living among strangers, held together not by kinship, but by law, trade, and shared belief. In Egypt, the Nile's rhythm became the pulse of an entire civilization, its floods so reliable you could set your calendar by them. But civilization came with a cost. Inequality deepened. Those who controlled the surplus controlled everything. The freedom of the nomad gave way to the hierarchy of the state. Wars were fought not over hunting grounds, but over fields, over irrigation channels, over whose god was stronger and whose king deserved tribute. Disease spread faster in crowded cities than it ever had in scattered camps, and the earth itself began to change beneath our plough. Forests fell, rivers were diverted, the wild spaces shrank. Yet we didn't turn back. We couldn't. The population had grown too large, the knowledge too deep, the investment too great. We had crossed a threshold, and there was no returning to the world of our ancestors. We had chosen permanence over freedom, certainty over adventure. We had chosen civilization. Every city skyline, every word we write, every war we fight began here when we first decided to stay. Civilization wasn't built in stone, it was built in choice. The choice to plant instead of wander, the choice to store instead of share, the choice to build walls, both literal and metaphorical, around what was ours. We traded the infinite horizon for the bounded field, and in doing so we invented property, power, and progress. Look around you now. The device in your hand, the roof over your head, the words you're reading, all of it traces back to that first decision to stay, to plant, to build. We are still living in the echo of the Neolithic Revolution, still grappling with questions it raised. How do we live together? Who decides what's fair? What do we owe to the earth that feeds us and to each other? The nomads who once wandered beneath endless skies still exist inside us, in our restlessness, our curiosity, our refusal to accept that this is all there is. But so do the first farmers who looked at barren ground and saw potential, who invested in a future they might not live to see. This was the moment history began. This is Through Time. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Through Time and share this journey with others, because the story of how we got here is the story of who we are and where we might still go.